Less than a billionth of a second after the Big Bang, a bubble much smaller than a fraction of an atom forms. This is the universe. It is unimaginably small and unimaginably hot. Within this bubble, the four known forces of nature, gravity, electromagnetism, plus the strong and the weak nuclear forces, are a combined superforce. Gravity suddenly splits off from the superforce as the universe expands. As the universe expands, it cools, which somehow sets off a burst of energy, fueling the hyperinflation of the universe, suggested by Alan Guth. This inflation locks in the uniformity of the universe pictured by the WMAP satellite. The universe is still less than a second old when the superforce decays into the separate forces of nature. Roughly 3 minutes after the Big Bang, the temperature of the universe has dropped to a mere 1 billion degrees Fahrenheit, cool enough for atomic nuclei to form. The element hydrogen forms. Some hydrogen atoms fuse to create helium, as proposed by Gamow and Alpher. $380,000 years later, and light travels through the darkness. The burst of radiation that Penzias and Wilson found happens now. A billion years after the Big Bang, stars take shape, producing the heavier elements like nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon, as Hoyle predicted. Roughly 9 billion years out, matter and gravity combine to form a perfectly typical star. Pressure creates heat at its core. This heat triggers thermonuclear fusion. A star is born. Stellar outflow clears away residual gases. A circumstellar disk of dust remains that eventually accrete into an entourage of planets and moons. One of these lumps of stardust, after being pummeled for eons by residual solar debris, has temperatures warm enough to allow hydrogen dioxide, water, to build up in the atmosphere. Liquid water gathers on the planet's surface.
This is Earth 4 billion years ago. There was no oxygen in the air. Molten lava flowed into an already poisonous sea. Hard to imagine, but this harsh environment was perfect for nurturing a miracle. Rain washed the necessary chemicals from the air, and lightning and ultraviolet radiation cooked these chemicals into an organic soup. And somehow, when the smoke cleared, there was something new, something amazing. A very, very special molecule with a graceful spiral shape. And it had talent. It could make copies of itself faster than it could be destroyed. This was the origin of life on Earth. And when this molecule learned to protect itself inside cell walls, life began to transform the planet. 3.5 billion years ago, cells learned how to directly use the sun's energy in the process of photosynthesis, and life grew exponentially. The oceans teem with cyanobacteria, and layers of these microorganisms mixed with sediments became the world's first living structures, stromatolites. For more than 1 billion years, these 3-foot-high mounds mark the limits of life's progress. But more important than the mounds themselves was their waste: oxygen. These new gases, at first toxic to all life, gave rise to the ozone layer. Shielded for the first time from the sun's damaging ultraviolet rays, life became unstoppable.
All that water, vast oceans of water sloshing back and forth, pulled by the moon, water banging into itself, and more important, if you go down to the bottom of the oceans, all that water dragging and banging against the seafloor literally slows down the spin of the Earth. It's as though the moon is putting its finger on a spinning top so that very slowly days on Earth get longer, about 2 seconds longer every 100,000 years. So over time, that adds up. 400 million years ago, a day on Earth was only 22 hours long. 200 million years ago, it was 23 hours long. Today, 24 hours long. And 400 million years from now, each day will be 26 hours.
For 100 million years, sponges, anemones, and flatworms dominated the ocean. Then, all of a sudden, if you can call 30 million years sudden, a huge variety of creatures appeared. This event is called the Cambrian explosion. Here is a stunningly developed marine worm. In the course of the Cambrian explosion, competition for food caused both predator and prey to become extremely sophisticated. This is the top predator of that period, a terrifically capable hunter. The Cambrian was a very dangerous time. Only slightly lower on the food chain, another deadly predator prowled the ocean depths. This one had 5 eyes on top of its head and a single extendable claw it used for hunting. Every animal group alive today had its origin in the Cambrian. The first fish appeared more than 500 million years ago, a predecessor to mankind's own group, the chordates. Fish quickly became a success story, getting faster and sleeker and far more numerous. They developed bony spines and, crucially, jaws with teeth.
Around 150 million years ago, a creature called Archaeopteryx took to the skies. Part reptile, part bird, the creature had teeth, solid bones, and reptilian claws. But it had something else too. Archaeopteryx had feathers. Over the next 75 million years, feathers and flight improved. Birds lost their teeth, and most grew hollow bones, which reduced weight and made flying easier. Flight may have evolved to help birds escape predators, catch fast prey, or to make it easier to move from place to place. No one really knows. One thing is certain. All 8,700 species of modern birds have feathers.
"65 million years ago, the Earth encountered a few problems. It was the end of the dinosaurs. A few groups of animals struggled through this Armageddon, and the mammals were among them. Today, the world is dominated by a magnificent variety of mammals.
Are one and the same, and that this is the real Cush of Genesis. And so Roll has identified the third of the 4 rivers in Genesis that pinpoint Eden. The location of the 4th river also slots into the place just where you'd expect it, in the southeastern quarter of the map. It's the river Kezel Uazon, which, if we're right, the biblical author called the Pishon, winding all through the land of Havilah, rich in gold. Gold is still found in the Kezel Uazon today. Indeed, the word Kezel means golden, the golden Uazon. But how can Uazon be the same as Pishon? The answer, as language experts have suggested, lies in the transcribing of an ancient Iranian name into Biblical Hebrew, which is a Semitic language. For example, the ancient Manian city of Uishderi is today known by the Arabic name of Pishdeli. The Iranian letter U has become a Semitic P. In the same way, the Iranian river name Uazon has been converted into Semitic Pishon by a biblical author. Now, the last piece of the geographical jigsaw puzzle. Remember the biblical story of Adam's 2 sons, Cain, the farmer, and Abel, the shepherd? Cain and Abel were instructed by their father to make an offering to God. Cain brought the produce of the fields, whereas Abel sacrificed a lamb and won God's favor. Bitterness and resentment grew in the heart of Cain, and in a fit of jealousy, he committed the most grievous sin of all.
Be cursed, and banished from the ground which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood at your hands. When you till the ground, it will no longer give up its strength to you. A fugitive wanderer you will be on this earth. And so Cain left Yahweh's presence, and settled in the land of Nod, to the east of Eden.
And that's the crucial bit of the text, in the land of Nod, to the east of Eden. Amazingly, the eastern region of our map bears the names Upper and Lower Nokti. And Nokti means belonging to Nod. Could this be the Nod of Genesis? It's now time to make the final step into paradise, westward into the Garden of Eden.
We're finally entering the Garden of Eden through the eastern gate, the road of banishment. It's an extraordinary feeling, actually, thinking that we're going back to the place that Adam and Eve left 7,000 years ago.
Once Roll gets into the valley of Tabriz, he sees that the Garden of Eden has disappeared forever, overrun by modern humankind. In a sense, the biblical prophecy that man would never return to paradise has come true. The garden now lies buried beneath this vast urban sprawl. But there's one place that humankind has not yet destroyed. In the Bible, the book of Ezekiel tells of the fall of man from the mountain of God in Eden. There is a large mountain overlooking the valley of Tabriz, the volcanic dome of Mount Sahand. And on the slopes of this mountain, you can get some idea of what the primeval world of Adam was like. If you believe in the literal truth of every word in the Bible, then you don't really need David Roll to prove that the Garden of Eden was a real place. If, however, you see the Eden story as a poetic metaphor, what is its metaphor? Why should this location, rather than any other, be identified as the place from which humans originated? The Bible places Adam in Eden about 1,000 years before the first cities were built in ancient Sumer toward the end of the Stone Age. So from that point of view, who was living here at that time? Archaeology has revealed the valleys of the Zagros Mountains in western Iran were crucial locations during the Neolithic Revolution. But why do anthropologists see this as such a momentous era in human history?
The Neolithic Revolution was probably the most important breakthrough that humanity's ever made in terms of change of life, because it's basically the foundation stone upon which the historical civilizations are built. We're basically talking about the beginning of farming, the beginning of the domestication of animals, growing crops in the fields around a permanent village. Now, it wasn't long before these villages became towns, and eventually these towns became cities, because without farming, there would never have been a city on the face of the earth.
We are the inheritors of that Neolithic revolution. So this really is our point of origin. Not surprising, then, that this is the location for the creation story. And here, near the summit of Mount Sahand, in the troglodyte village of Kandavan, you can almost touch the primeval world of Neolithic Adam. We learn from the creation mythology of ancient Mesopotamia that man was created in the likeness of the gods by combining the clay of the earth with the blood of a slain god. And the Neolithic people here used the red earth, or clay, in their rituals, taking it from the red mountain overlooking the garden.
Our main knowledge about the use of red ochre is in burial rituals. The bodies were covered with red ochre, and sometimes just the bones. And I think what this shows is the symbolism used by early human beings. As we're born into this world covered in blood, so when we leave this world and go to the next world, we are also to be covered in blood, which the red ochre symbolizes.
According to the Bible, Adam too was made of clay. In fact, the name Adam means red earth. But what of Adam the man? Perhaps fewer of us today are prepared to believe that he was the first human created by God from the clay of Eden. But did a historical Adam ever exist? He certainly did in the mind of the Genesis author. He is simply the 10th generation before Noah, and that's as far back as anyone could go. Adam existed because he was remembered by his descendants, and he was the first spiritual man, the first to communicate with his God. We may not be able to truly return to the earthly paradise, but at least by means of modern television magic, we can restore the Valley of the Garden back to its primeval beauty just for a glimpse of Adam's world. Climatologists tell us that westerly winds brought warm air from the Mediterranean, creating a microclimate in the long, narrow valley. The extra moisture encouraged dense vegetation growth, and a large variety of trees enticing to look at and bearing fruit good to eat. In the deep red soil covering the foothills, orchards of apple, apricot, pistachio, and almond trees grew in abundance.
Göbekli Tepe is 12,000 years old, over twice as old as the pyramids. Already, Klaus has found dozens of standing stones, each one carved with mysterious symbols. These stone circles are possibly the oldest purpose-built temples in the world.
Sometimes there are arms and hands and fingers depicted, so it's very clear that the T part is a human head in profile, and the shaft of the pillar is a human body. So here we have an example of the depiction of an arm which is going down here, and the fingers, the hand and the fingers are not excavated yet, but it's clear they will appear when we will continue to work here.
So you've got a circle of smaller T-shaped pillars and then two enormous ones in the centre.
It's always the same. There are two in the centre which are very big and freestanding, surrounded by smaller but similar ones. And we are understanding it as a meeting, as a gathering of these beings made of stone. Here now we have the most interesting reliefs.
Oh, wow.
Ibis, snake, and a vulture. It's a story illustrated by these animals. And this story is not a peaceful one. A scorpion, snake, and so on. So our model for the function of all this installation is they had been made for burial reasons, to bring the dead bodies to open places, and so vultures are eating the flesh and other birds.
So you think this might have been a site for these sky burials, where people are left out in the open to be picked clean by vultures?
Yeah, that's our model.
And these are the vultures?
These are the vultures, yeah.
It almost looks like hieroglyphics.
Maybe pre-hieroglyphic messages or Stone Age hieroglyphic.
Klaus is anxious to show me his most spectacular discovery.
And here we found this nice animal.
This is incredibly beautiful. I mean, this is sculpture. It's not just a relief, is it? Sure. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's clearly it's a masterpiece of work.
It makes you rethink the Stone Age, doesn't it? I mean, you tend to think of hunter-gatherers as being, I don't know, fairly crude in some ways, and not necessarily capable of producing artifacts that beautiful.
It's clear that in these societies had specialists for stoneworking at least. So really people who didn't do anything else as to produce sculptures and pillars and reliefs from stone.
These are such exciting finds, aren't they? Yeah. This place suggests a society that could support specialist craftsmen and perhaps even a priesthood. It was the beginning of a totally new way of life.
These are sites of settled hunters. So it was a high culture of hunters here, which was nearly exploding in the 10th millennium. So it's still a hunter-gatherer society in its structures and in its buildings, its monuments.
But there was another very important difference between these hunter-gatherers and any of their predecessors. They were settling down, abandoning their nomadic lifestyle. A huge shift which would help spark a Europe-wide revolution.